I'm gonna do something criminal. Hi, hello, welcome to my knitting podcast. My name is Eva, I'm a knitter from Germany and I'm here to talk about all things knitting, but I also occasionally like to dabble in sewing and many other fiber crafts. This is my first knitting podcast ever, so I think for the beginning we're just gonna start with what we know. So the first thing I'm gonna talk about are any current whips. Now the first thing is something that has been finished but is going to become not finished again. This is my sweater number 15 by Myfavourithingsknitwear, and I really like the way it looks. And I had a lot of fun doing the cables and I really like the yarn. The yarn is Erika British Blueface and Yarns Zen, which is a fluffy merino, fluffy mohair type of yarn. But I really guess I should have blocked my gauge swatch, because I knitted the gauge swatch in pattern with the cables and it came out perfect. Like to the millimeter it was on point. And then I knitted this sweater and it first kind of looked like a brain, which I don't mind because I have a background in neurolinguistics and I thought it was kind of cool to wear a sweater to work. I work in neuromarketing. That looks like a brain, so I thought that was kind of cool. But I blocked it and the spaces between the cables became much wider. Like, duh, of course they would. So the sweater did grow quite a bit in size. Not necessarily in length. The length is very good, I think. But the armholes, they're so deep and I really don't like the way that looks. And when the armhole is that deep, there's gonna be that bit of skin touching, like the skin of your torso and the skin of your arms when you're wearing that sweater, and that just gives me the ick. So my plan is to unravel this and knit a cardigan out of that yarn. I'm not gonna pick apart the mohair and the wool. That would be too much effort. And I'm also contemplating not unraveling the sweater entirely and then caking it up and knitting from these cakes. I'm gonna do something criminal and just unravel this bit by bit and knit from this as my ball of yarn. So if you've ever done that before, please let me know in the comments how that went. This time I am not gonna make the mistake of not washing my gauge swatch. So any like ramen noodle crimpiness that might be going on in the gauge swatch should be going away as soon as I wash it, I figure. So with that washed and blocked gauge swatch, I think the end result should be fine. I hope. Now, the next whip is a sweater for my boyfriend. He had his birthday in February, like 2 weeks back, and I wanted to gift him a sweater of his choice. And first, I wanted to make a vintage colorwork sweater, which is, I think it's the Dancing Deer sweater by Annabelle Fox. And I really liked the motif on that one. I thought it was very cool. The thing is, I wanted my boyfriend, who is a man, who is always very hot, as men are, I wanted him to be able to wear that sweater a large portion of the year. And so I figured 100% wool or merino would be too warm for him. So I got Filcolana Merci, which is 50% wool and 50% cotton. And I thought knitting that 50-50 blend would be okay. But it turns out I still hate knitting with cotton. So that yarn was giving me not a good time, considering also that it was very thin. Like, that sweater said it was DK weight, but for me personally, I thought the yarn is fingering weight. And knitting a very complex colorwork pattern on 3.25mm needles with floats that are like 20 stitches long, I felt forced to learn how to do ladder bag jacquard, because catching floats that are this long, I'm not sure if that sweater would have even fitted my boyfriend. So I got halfway through the first stripe of deers. Halfway through the first stripe of animals and I decided I cannot do this. This yarn is driving me insane. I hate it. So I put that in hibernation and I decided to knit something else. A more modern colorwork pattern where the floats aren't so long and in a slightly thicker yarn. So I decided, well, my boyfriend decided, he wanted the Unbearable sweater by Les Garçons, which is a circular yoke top-down sweater that has this colorwork portion at the top. And at this moment I am fully done with the colorwork yoke, which was a lot of fun actually. The floats weren't too bad. Like here, the brown bits, like the chest of the bears, they got kind of long, and down here I adapted the yellow decorative elements to be able to not have these super long floats, because I did not feel like dealing with them. And I'm knitting this in a Drops Fine Merino, which I really like. It is very soft, it is very budget friendly. I highly recommend that yarn. And as I was talking to my boyfriend, he was like, I like the look of vintage anything. We are both very into 1960s, 1970s design. And he wanted to go with brown and yellow. And I told him it's giving pee pee poo poo. But he insisted on these colors, so that's what I'm making for him, and I don't think it's too bad. I think that is gonna look quite cool when it's done. The tension is kind of off in places, and I did run out of the white yarn around here, because in the pattern it said I would need about like 200 meters of the white yarn, and I got one ball, because I think one ball of Drops Fine Merino is about 220 meters, and it turns out that was not enough, so I had to substitute with some white sock yarn held double. There's a bit of a color difference, but I think with blocking it's gonna be fine, right? And I'm also duplicate stitching the center of the flowers. I always want to say yolk of the flowers, but they're flowers, not eggs. So yeah, the center of the flowers I am duplicate stitching, because I did not feel like learning how to knit with 3 colors at the same time. So I felt that was gonna be more practical. And I did stranded colorwork up until this point, and then I thought the floats between the bottom halves of the last flowers are getting quite long. And again, ladderback jacquard is not something I enjoy doing, so I decided to switch to intarsia in the round. And I just knit to my beginning of round, then I did a German short row turning stitch and purled back all the way. And I guess it went okay. Like, didn't do anything crazy to the fit or the shape of the sweater, so I'm guessing it worked. And I had a lot of ends to sew in, but that's okay. I don't mind sewing in ends. So the next step with this sweater would be to continue on the body. I've already split first sleeves and I've already added the collar because the original pattern has a hood on it. And my boyfriend did not want the hood. And if you've ever knit anything with a hood before, you will know that the cast on edge for a hood is much wider usually than the cast on edge you would have for a crew neck, like this. So I just cast on, like the pattern said, and I thought that's gonna be a problem for future Eva. And yes, future Eva did deal with it. I just picked up stitches in like 3 stitch increments. So I picked up 3 and then I skipped 1 and then I picked up the 4th and then I picked up 3 again, skipped the 4th and then picked up 1 again. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, it fits over his head. I already made him try it on and things seem to be going quite smooth so far. And my last current whip is the Semper Sweater V Neck. Because as everyone knows, if you have a more complex project going, then you also have to have a stockinette in the round comfort knit. And this is not fully stockinette in the round yet. But I think I'm pretty close. I've already sectioned off the sleeves and I think I only have to do a bit more of increasing until I get to the stockinette in the round portion, and then I'm gonna have 2 sweaters that are stockinette in the round, and then I'm gonna be bored of all of my whips. But yeah, again, that is a problem for future me. I am knitting this in Knitting for Olive Merino and Filcolana Tilia, which is this mohair yarn. This is the color Clover Green and this is, I think, Juicy Green. And this is knit on 4mm needles. And like, I guess the gauge is good. It is a bit more airy than I personally would have chosen. I like my sweaters very compact and very stiff for some reason. I guess because I'm always cold. I did hit gauge very on point, which always surprises me because I'm usually a tighter knitter. So yeah, this is going very smoothly. I got a lot of the yoke done at a knitting meetup I went to like 2 weeks ago, which was very nice, meeting so many knitters my age. It was the first time we met up. And we were about 20 people and we went to a cafe at a museum for modern art, and it had these like big glass walls so you could totally see inside from when you were walking by outside. And there were a lot of people who were, in German you would say, schauen wie ein Auto. They were looking like a car. Because I guess it is somewhat unusual to have this many young people come together and knit. But it was very nice, I enjoyed it a lot. Everyone was very kind and we had some good conversations about knitting, and we also got kind of a lot of knitting done. And tomorrow I'm gonna go to the next meetup and I'm very excited. Now these were my current whips, and now I'm gonna move on to recent acquisitions. I'm currently doing a low buy year, but there are some exceptions I'm allowed to make. One of the yarn purchases I made was allowed, the other one was not allowed, but I'm still very happy about it. The first acquisition I made is this very fluffy, very neon orange yarn, because one of my knitting friends from that knitting meetup, she shared in her Instagram stories a test knitting haul by a company which I had gotten ads from previously and which I thought looked very sketchy. I don't know, something about that corporate identity or the design of these ads just kind of put me off. And also the name of that company is unique.com, I believe. And I don't know, putting that .com of the domain into your username automatically makes it seem very sketchy to me. There's nothing sketchy about that company. They're based in the city where I live, in Munich, and they have a lot of very cool yarns and they offer knitting sets, and there's nothing sketchy about them. I don't know why I thought they were being sketchy, but anyway. They put out a test knitting call for the... Why is there plants in my yarn? They put out a test knitting call for a slipover. It is called the Knitting Poet Slipover, and it is this kind of very square slipover at the top, and it has a very dainty lace edge, and it looked like a lot of fun to knit, and it is fluffy, and it is a vest. And if you know me in real life, you know I cannot say no to a vest. If I see a vest, I have to knit it. So I applied to become a test knitter and I got accepted, and they sent me a 20% off code for the yarn. And this is the Ombelle by Fonty, which it says on the label is from France. And the balls are huge. Like, look at the size of this ball. And if you're sensitive to mohair, I think this is not gonna be for you. I see how it could potentially be a bit scratchy. But I'm not sensitive to anything ever. Like, give me a sweater made of sandpaper and I'm gonna be happy. So yeah, that is not an issue for me, luckily. And when I opened that box, I looked at that yarn and was like, this reminds me of another yarn that I have at home that I love very much, which is the Fluff yarn by Hipknitshop. And the problem with Hipknitshop is they are based in Norway. And I'm not good with geography. Like, I know where Norway is, but for some reason I have to pay taxes and customs when I order from Norway. And occasionally I like to do that because, as I said, I love the fluff yarn so much. I have knit myself the Jelly Bean sweater by Embra Julie, and I love that thing. I could wear this every day. I'm just kind of concerned it's gonna fall apart very fast if I do that, so I'm not wearing it every day. But I really like that yarn. It is fluffy, and the fiber composition is, let me just check. The fiber composition is 80% kid mohair, 11% merino and 9% polyamide. I was kind of worried that the polyamide in this would somehow make this feel very plasticky, which it does not, I guess. But again, I'm not very sensitive to, so I couldn't tell you. And this one is very, very similar in feel and also in fiber composition. This is 75% mohair, 20% wool and 5% polyamide. And this one is slightly chunkier. This one, they say you should use 7 to 10 millimeter needles, and this one is a bit finer, like the main thread is a bit finer. And this is for 3.5 to 4 millimeter needles, and also the length is slightly different. This one is 145 meters on 50 grams, and this one is 100 meters on 50 grams. But I think this is gonna be such a good substitute for this, so I don't have to spend so much money on customs anymore. And yeah, I'm very excited to cast this on. I'm thinking the test knitting deadline is the 20th of March. Right now it's the 25th of February, I believe. So this gives me about a month. Today and tomorrow at the knitting meetup, I think I'm gonna focus on the Unbearable sweater, so I can get a huge portion of the stockinette body and sleeve done. And then I'm gonna cast this on. I'm also very excited to have this for spring, because I imagine this with a white t-shirt under it and some light blue jeans and maybe some cool loafers. And this is gonna be such an awesome outfit. So I'm very excited. Go away, I'm done talking about you. The next acquisition I made is a forbidden one. No, just kidding. I am trying not to buy much yarn at the moment. I'm trying to only buy yarn if I have actually a project planned. And I tend to never buy yarn with no project in mind, so that hasn't really been an issue, but I don't want to get into the habit of doing that at all. And I want to avoid building up a huge stash. But my mother, who is also a knitter, she has been knitting since she was 16, so for about 45 years now. She is an expert knitter. And I got to enjoy those perks as a child a lot. I would just be able to go up to her and be like, "Mama, I want a sweater that looks like this and this." And she was like, "Sure, give me 2 weeks and I'm gonna make it for you." So that was pretty cool. And she was told by my cousin, who lives in a city like north from here. She was told by my very attentive cousin, who knows that both of us like to knit, that there is a yarn store that was gonna have a closing up sale with 20% off everything. And since that city is not far from where my mom lives, we decided that we have to go. And so I went to see my mom, and we went to that city, and we went to that yarn store. And in my head, there's 3 types of yarn stores. Like, I'm thinking of them as 3 tiers of yarn stores. The bottom tier would be those craft store adjacent yarn stores, like Joann's in the US, I guess, and like Wolle Rödel in Germany, for example, where you have more low budget yarns and they have really cool colors and they have a great selection. But for me as a yarn snob, it's hard to shop there because most of the yarns have acrylic in them, and that is something I do not like. I don't tend to like that plasticky feeling on my skin. I don't know, it feels squeaky to me. So I don't tend to gravitate towards yarn with acrylic in it, but I think it's great for beginner knitters because it doesn't break the bank if you just want to try if knitting is for you. That is the bottom tier. Then the second tier, like the mid tier, are those grandma yarn stores. you know, they carry a lot of high quality wools and they carry more of that rustic type of yarn like Noro and Isaga and things like that, but they tend to not have the most vibrant colors, and they tend to carry, at least in Germany, a lot of Langyarns. Langyarns is a huge brand, I believe they're from a Scandinavian country, and they have very good yarn. And I do not dislike their yarn, I've knit with it before, and I think it's great yarn. They have some very cool colors if the yarn store decides to order these and not just like powder blue and grey and beige, which I have nothing against that, it's just not my style. So yeah, that is the second tier, and the third tier would be those very cool, like quaint little yarn stores in bigger cities, and they tend to have a lot of hand-dyed yarns, maybe even hand-dyed in the store by the store owners, and those are my favorite types of yarn stores, honestly, because you can find some very cool stuff in there. Why is my camera doing that? Am I still recording? I hope so. So, the yarn store we went to that had the closing up sale was a second tier yarn store. Like, the people that were already in there when we went, they were kind of older and they were looking at these like local wool brands, and I thought I would like to buy something from a local wool brand. The brand is called Frankenwolle, and I recently saw a documentary about them on TV where one of the shepherds, I guess, was saying how it's very difficult to sell sheep fleeces because his flock of sheep doesn't make enough to be selling to like the huge factories in the industry, but the little bit of fleece his sheep make is really only suited to become like yarn for. Now my camera has stopped recording. Thank you very much. So yeah, the shepherd that produces fiber for that yarn brand, he was saying how it was getting kind of difficult and how he's not getting very much money for a single fleece. I believe he was saying that he was getting like €1.50 per fleece, which is basically nothing, and that kind of made me sad for him and I wanted to support him. But I went into that yarn store and I looked at the Frankenwolle yarns, and sadly they didn't have any colors that spoke to me, but I'm gonna be keeping an eye out to eventually purchase something from them. Maybe even something for a sweater for my boyfriend. Anyways, I looked at all of the yarn that was left, and there was a lot of lang yarns and a lot of Merino 120. That yarn is called, and then I found a small shelf like right in the middle of the store, and it was like one tiny compartment in one tiny shelf, and I saw cashmere yarn, and I was like, I've always wanted to try cashmere yarn, and they have 20% off right now, so I really should get myself some cashmere yarn. And so I bought 2 balls of the Langyarns cashmere premium, cashmere premium, I'm sorry, it's premium. And 25 grams are 150 meters, and as I said, I don't tend to buy just random yarn. I always need to have a project in mind so that it's not gonna feel like an unnecessary purchase to me. So I was standing in that yarn store on my phone on Ravelry, and I was looking up what other people have made with yarn, and I saw that quite a lot of people have made the scarf number, I don't know, I'm gonna have to look that up, that scarf by Myfavouritingsknitwear. And I have been eyeing that scarf last winter when I was trying to get on that trend of tiny little ridiculous small scarves. And I have since made a tiny little small ridiculous scarf by Sari Nordlund, the Soul Sister scarf, which I love wearing. It is very warm, although it is very small, so it doesn't add a lot of bulk to your outfit. It's just a nice little pop of color, and I love wearing that tiny little scarf. So I thought it was only justified to make myself a second tiny ridiculous scarf, made from cashmere this time. And I was trying to decide between green and red, because those were the only colors they had left that were like colorful colors, not beige or grey, where they had 2 balls left. And for that scarf, I believe you would need 2 balls. And I have been also eyeing up another scarf by Sari Nordlund. I think it's called the Turtle Dove scarf. It has a bit of a cable pattern, and she knit her sample in this very vibrant juicy green. And I have to make that in that very vibrant juicy green that Sari Nordlund used. So I thought, I can't have 2 green scarves. That would be, I don't know, too much. So I went with the red, and I'm not gonna cast this on right now. I think I'm gonna just focus on my spring and summer knits, and then I might start this project in autumn, when it is actually the seasons to be wearing tiny, ridiculous scarves. So yeah, I'm very happy about this. It is very, very soft. And that is the last of my acquisitions. I'm just now realizing I haven't told you what I'm wearing. This is also a hand-knit sweater. This is the Salcombe sweater by Coco Amour Knitwear. And it is knit in Gepard Wulia, like these 3 colors, the blue, the red and the pink is Gepard Wulia, and then they didn't have a purple, so I went for Peer Gynt by Sandnes Garn. And I don't know, do you know that feeling when you're ordering yarn for a project and you're excited because you just ordered yarn, but when the yarn arrives, you're not totally excited about the project anymore because you're not sure if it's right for you, I guess? So when that happens to me, I just push through and I finish the project. And this was a project like that. I was kind of unsure about it while I was knitting it. But it turns out this has become one of my most worn sweaters, because when I knit a sweater that I'm very excited about, I tend to be a bit precious about it. I don't want anything to happen to it, and therefore I don't tend to wear it a lot. So my favorite sweaters are the ones I wear least, which is kind of stupid, I guess. But this one, I'm not very precious about it because I wasn't super excited about it in the beginning. That sounds very mean. Of course I was excited about it because I am excited about knitting. But yeah, there is no reason for me to be overly precious about this sweater, and I've just been wearing it around the house, and if I have to go run any errands where I feel like I don't need to put on a good outfit, or I don't want to waste a good outfit on just going to run errands, you know? So yeah, this is one of my most worn sweaters. I'm very happy with it. I might put some elastic in the neckband because I feel like it has stretched out a bit already, but it is great for traveling. It is very oversized, very cozy. I love it a lot. And I'm very happy about it. So I hope you've enjoyed this knitting podcast, and let me know in the comments, what are you currently knitting on? Do you have several whips, or are you a monogamous knitter? I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.